And now, Gen Con tips from Under Discussion, the Undergopher podcast.
Tip 1, shower.
Tip 2, at least 2 meals a day.
Tip 3, bathe.
Tip 4, get at least 3 hours of sleep a day.
Tip 5, bathe.
Tip 6, arrive early.
Tip 7, shower.
Tip 8, don't overschedule.
Tip 9, shower.
Tip number 10, remember to tip.
Tip 11, bathe.
Tip 12, play something new.
Tip 13, shower.
And remember your deodorant.
Under Discussion, the Undergopher podcast can be heard at undergopher.com or facebook.com/underdiscussion.
And check us out on iTunes.
This is Ross Payton with Role Playing Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 90, Theater of the Mind. And with me, as always, is Mr. Tom Church. And with us, a special guest, Bill.
Yes, this is Tom. Say hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
You can rotate the mics. Again, I
Say it again so they can hear you.
You can rotate the mics.
But Tom looks at me hungrily when I rotate the mic.
Yeah, well, that's just...
I do that to everyone. That's the way I make friends. It's why I have none.
Tom doesn't share mics. Very... like Joey. Doesn't share food. Yeah, 90s kids. All right, so...
Whoa, topical.
In this episode... not really. In this episode... really the opposite of topical. In this episode, we're going to be talking about GM descriptions versus player's interpretation. And more specifically, what happens when the GM says something, the player gets a totally different picture in his theater of the mind than the GM.
I've heard it happen sometimes in the film industry and other things.
Well, it happens in role-playing games all of the time. It seems like there's always... But
what happens with us, we don't put millions of dollars in delays as we try to fix the problem.
Right, exactly. So
we're more innocent and better.
So we three GMs will give us how we describe situations and what we do.
Orientar.
All right.
It's called art, Ross.
Bill does Barbershop Quartet because he does. So
he does.
I will try to keep the singing to a minimum.
I don't.
But it's like resisting what comes naturally.
Mm-hmm.
First off, though, we do have a bit of news. Base Raiders. I finally sent off the first draft of the playtest version of it. 220 pages of Base Raider goodness. If you're a high-level backer, you got that.
You totally did.
If you want, it's still missing the last 2 chapters, which are Adventure Advice and the 10 NPCs. In 10 NPCs being a stretch goal, so that took a little longer to work. And so Base Raiders is a little bit behind schedule. I plan to get the final... Well, not the final, but the complete playtest draft out before Gen Con. Then I'll give you guys a month to look it over, give feedback, and then I'll print the book. And you'll get it in the mail at some point in the future.
And it'll become a thing in reality.
And I will only have to rob a few convenience stores to pay for international shipping. Because
Print Ross's book.
Thanks there, Bill.
Yes.
I'm helping.
Yes. And Ross is not kidding. He will totally hold up any place he needs.
I will probably have to, given how expensive international shipping has gotten from when I launched that Kickstarter and now. It's like tripled in price, which is fun. If you...
Should we go ahead and do a thanks Obama for that?
I don't really think it's Obama's fault.
What are you talking about, Ross?
Okay, thanks Obama.
It's everything.
Does
Remember?
that satisfy you?
Everything.
I just did it.
Like you had a cold. That's Obama's fault too, right?
All right. Thanks, Obama.
There you go. Thank you.
That was the second time I said it.
That was horrible, Ross.
All right.
Death panels.
All right. And so
topical.
Derailed.
So if you have concerns about it, I know some people have looked at it, keep in mind that this is not based on Fate Core. This is based on Strange Fate, which comes from the Kerberos Club version of the Fate rules. A
good book, by the
rules
way.
are about over 50,000 words with another 10,000 words worth of rules that I've added. So it's about 60,000 words worth of rules. That's just rules, not counting the setting chapters, talking about the history. So Fate Core itself is 80,000 words. And instead of giving aspects a separate chapter, I put it within playing the game, chapter 7. But there are PDF bookmarks, so you can find aspects, skills, conflicts, all the rules you need. So I think if you look through it, you should be able to find everything you need. It's not organized exactly like Fate Core, so please do not be alarmed by that. I like Strange Fate because it does superpowers well. Fate Core really doesn't have anything on superpowers yet that I've seen that really looks satisfactory. So, but I'm sure they will have it. So that's about Fate. Enough about Base Raiders. Next up, we have Transhuman, the Eclipse Phase book. That's coming out. The PDF will be for sale August 7th. And then the book will come out about a month or two after that. And Caleb and I wrote for it. So you can find our names and the name of the special thanks to the RPPR crew for the Eclipse phase.
That's all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for that.
You were in the one shot, the very first Eclipse phase game we ran, so you were in that.
I'm still a sad panda.
But not a sad panda crime boss. Spoiler alert.
No. And if you think that's not cool, then you fail as a human being.
Pretty much. So look out for that. It's got, if you're Eclipse phase player, it has a lot of new rules for morphs, asyncs, nanofabrication, moxie, like all kinds of crazy cool stuff. So it's a must-have for Eclipse phase players. Finally, we're going to Gen Con.
Yes, not
Most of
not
us
Bill.
are.
I'm
Not
sorry.
Bill.
I'm sorry. I'm married and employed. What can I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, for his responsibilities, and I'm putting up quotation marks
And
in the
his
air.
life and his good life, that is
what he has.
having a good job in this economy and a stable relationship. Jeez. Yeah.
Jeez, what the
Owning a
hell,
home,
man?
Yeah. It's
What's up? What is up with that?
weird.
I'm sorry. I will throw away everything for a 3-day convention in Indianapolis. You talked me into it.
Hey, dude, 4-day.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's a
Excuse
whole
me.
extra day.
That day
It's the
makes
best-
all the difference.
It's the best 4 days in gaming. Okay.
All right. So for those of you who will be at Gen Con, the RPPR meetup is on Friday night, not Thursday, because not on Thursday because Caleb and I have prior commitments, so we can't make it. But Friday, 6 p.m., that's August 16th, 6 p.m. at the Hyatt lobby in Indianapolis. We'll all meet up.
So anyone who wants to hang out with
Bad,
me at like
cheap
Ruth's
food.
Chris or somewhere, you can do that.
Yeah, I'm running 2 games there. That's all I'm officially there to do.
I'm not doing anything official, but if the fans want to, I could do something, for the RPPR fans.
Tom's doing everything unofficial.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Thought we agreed not to talk about that.
All
I
right.
didn't name any names.
But now that we are talking about it,
All right. So, if you want to try and coordinate other games, Tom, or something like that, you can post on the RPPR.
and I'll be bringing my
message,
own. I'll be bringing my own
board.
recorder, so everything's going to be all awesome. I will
Yeah.
make you more internet famous than you already are.
Post on the RPPR forums in the Gen Con thread, Gen Con 2013 thread, to coordinate other games, meetups, mini meetups, or whatever you want to do. I know I'll try and run something. Depending on how many people show up, we might play Do You Worship Cthulhu? We might play The Quiet Year. We might play Fiasco. I don't know.
I got a couple of Call of Cthulhu scenarios I could
Yeah.
run quickly.
Play Slasher Flick with like half a dozen people. It'll
Yeah.
work great.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
talk
we'll
about Slasher Flick later
It will
on.
totally not be. It'll totally not be a clusterfuck.
It will be a clusterfuck.
It'll be the best clusterfuck,
It could be. It could be.
but it will be a clusterfuck.
So
We've said a lot of swear words in the last few seconds.
Spoilers.
So keep that in mind, and we're looking forward to having a lot of fun. So, anyways, let's get to the main topic, and of course, we have anecdotes and shout outs later on in this episode. So, and a letter from Tom.
I do.
You better. It better.
I
be
totally
right.
wrote that shit.
Good.
I put words on paper.
You are a barbarian.
I know, right?
I am looking at the paper. It is covered in words.
Words.
Not entirely. Like there is white space still there, like above the.
Well, yeah, okay. We're not talking like schizophrenics.
Not like
scribbles
7.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. It's not quite.
Do
at
not
that
look
level.
between the spaces of words, for you are not supposed to look there.
Here we go. Get a little Lovecraftian right there.
Yeah,
you also-
Caleb's going to write a scenario about the creature that lives in between paragraphs, right? That's coming.
You just lost sanity.
Oh man, that is No Security Part 2. Haha, you thought you didn't have anything you were afraid of? I'll make you afraid of all the things.
Yeah, there's a demon hidden between the spaces of words in this Dostoevsky novel. Look for it.
All right, so we begin derailing it quite a bit enough. So the origin of this episode idea came from Tribes of Tokyo.
Not a dream. Trust me.
No,
It was not a dream.
Tribes of Tokyo, there was a lot of very concrete planning and tactical action that involved
Concrete. That's a building substance.
It is.
And the opposite of abstract.
Yes. Like I'm going to be positioned at this exact
Information.
place in order to get the drop on the bad guys and do this,
Yeah.
and that. And in particular, there's one upcoming game. I think it's the next one, episode 3 or 4, that's coming up where the players try to ambush some bad guys some biker gang members in a hotel. They're going to a hotel room to try and grab somebody, and the players have set this up. They know that the hotel room's empty. They're in the hotel room behind it, across the hallway, so they're trying to get the drop on it. And what they didn't realize is Caleb thought he could look through the peephole, or the players thought that you could look through the peephole and see everyone down the hallway. But the way I had pictured it in my mind's eye, in my theater of the mind, is that the room, the lobby, or the sort of waiting room where the elevators are, there is sort of a recessed wall. So somebody could be leaning against that corner and you wouldn't see them from the peephole in the middle of the hallway. And so when the players open the door to get the jump on the guys in the hallway, they don't see the two waiting by the elevator door. And that was like, what? What's going on? You know, they're like, what? That's not fair.
That was a great impression of what our words were, Ross.
Yeah,
like, what is
it's all clicks and whistles to me when you guys are all bitching about
Yes,
shit.
I tend to speak Neo-Cetacean whenever I have a problem with you, Ross.
As read by
Whenever
Tim
you're complaining
Allen.
about things in my game, it's all in one ear, out the other. I don't.
It's like, whoa, is someone watching Flipper in here?
Yeah.
Is that one of the adults from a Charlie Brown cartoon?
But I realized, like,
Topical.
There was sort of like, from my brain to your brain, there was kind of a misunderstanding. And,
Slight lag, if you will.
well, it's like lost in
Map
translation.
corruption.
For those of you who
Data.
didn't know, Ross is not a telepath.
Yeah, and neither are the players.
And I have to say that, otherwise he tortures the inside of my brain continuously.
So let's just go, like, what happened? What do you, like, when you're designing a scene, like, you always have a very concrete, like, very specific view of what the area there is, where they are, what's going on, what's available, what's around them. It's very specific, and so when the players try and do something that contradicts my mental image, I'm like, whoa, hey, there's sort of like a derailment. We have to sort of pick up from there. So for Bill, first, when you're describing a scene, like, how specific, how malleable is it in your mind's eye when you're describing a scene as a GM?
You know, there's kind of a spectrum there, and I think it has a lot to do with system. If I'm playing it, if I'm running a system like D&D that sort of lends itself to sort of externalizing and making explicit all that stuff, like drawing maps and all that, that tends to make me sort of visualize what I'm doing a little bit less because I'm hoping to just draw it out or what have you. On the opposite end, when you initially started talking about this topic, I was thinking of, Don't Rest Your Head. And for like all the different scenes in there, I can tell you if I had any art skills whatsoever, I could, really do some magnificent art of like all the different scenes I had in mind because it is so very description heavy to sort of build that atmosphere. And because there's not really anything where positioning is going to be important other than in an ad hoc kind of way, like, yeah, I have fantastic set dressing for that.
Man.
Yeah. So are there game systems where it's like very more malleable and you're not very you've given two examples of very explicit things like like in D&D, like
sort of opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, so if a player describes something, trying to do something like, I pick up the trash can, and in Don't Rest Your Head, you'd be like, well, all right, I guess there could be a trash can. But in D&D, like, no, look at the map, there's no trash can. So that's basically your what you're saying.
Pretty much. Okay. If the system lends itself to like making those things explicit, then I'm going to draw something out and say, play it as it lies.
Right.
On the other hand, if it's more given to like especially if it's a thing that you could re-ask as a question, you know, like, is there a trash can there I can pick up? It doesn't bug me to say, yes, it makes sense for there to be a trash can on the city street.
Okay. All right. So Tom,
I kind of think as much the amount of description I put into something is kind of dictated by the game I'm playing.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Similar
honestly,
to Bill, okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing that's kind of along the same lines. But like, if I'm running D&D during a combat, doesn't matter what the room looks like as long as I can sketch out what's on it. Because
well, you pull out the 5x the one
but it doesn't matter.
Grid. Yeah,
because you're not gonna look for an improvised weapon to attack with. You don't care if what does the fountain statuary look like in the center of the room. You don't care because it's just going to be in the background while you're fighting enemies.
Well, okay, like on the other hand, if you're in a haunted manor,
But yeah, if it's a game that
you're in the ballroom,
yeah, but if it's a game that lends itself to that, that's kind of when I try to.
Well, here's a question for that then. If let's say you're playing D&D and it takes place in a haunted manor that has been abandoned for like 100 years, the player is on the top of the staircase and they want to attack an enemy who's on the ground floor. They say, "Well, I jump on the chandelier and swing over and hit him in the face." Would you say you haven't previously thought? Would you say like? Well, there would be chandeliers in a manor, but like it's abandoned, the chandelier could have fallen over, been looted long ago.
In that case,
would you let the player decide, or would you just make the ruling yourself?
First of all, if there's a player that wants to do that, well, in combat and D&D, like they want to try to make it cinematic, I'm going to help them make it cinematic.
So you give players.
Yes, I would much rather. I'd much rather have a cinematic combat than straight up numbers and grids.
Okay.
So yes, in that case, as long as they don't do something stupid like, okay, we're in a haunted mansion, like, okay, is there a crane I can swing from? Like, no. But if it's within a very wide realm of logic, say like a chandelier, like, could I swing out? And it's like, yes, thank Christ, yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you for actually wanting to throw some life into this combat. So I think description's important for kind of like two things, really, like investigation and combat. Mm-hmm. I think the more you throw in those two things, because obviously if you're trying to find something, if you're like looking through a hotel room looking for something, you want to know exactly what the hotel looks like, exactly where everything is. And it's the same thing in combat. If you want to run a combat where you want to encourage use that floor lamp as a weapon, or it's just a sewing kit. Have a bunch of needles in this hotel room that actually still has the sewing kit. Mm-hmm. Like you want that kind of stuff really for those two things.
Okay.
So if it's those two things I'm doing, I really try to lay on the description, and I'm much better at this, obviously, in certain settings.
Right.
I think I'm better in modern day stuff than I am in fantasy and whatnot.
Right. I mean, for me though, I'm very much like it is what it is, and like if it's, I know even like in one of the more recent. Fortunes of War episode, like they say, Ross, there should be a chandelier. And I'm like, nope, there wasn't. Like, I didn't picture one in my head. There's no chandelier. I don't give a shit. There's no chandelier. That's just how it is. So now, if it's something I haven't thought of, and it could, like, if it is something that would make sense to be there, if it's thematically appropriate, and it's not something that I have decided. I haven't made a ruling on in my head, then yeah, I could I wouldn't like necessarily give it to the players, but I would give them a luck chance, a moxie roll, or like odds are even.
Preparedness roll in the one roll engine. Right. But yeah, no, I think thematically, like if it's thematically important and enhances the fun of the game, that's usually when I'm for it.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, for me, I never, even if it is appropriate or like it would be thematically cool or something, I don't necessarily give it to the players. I always want it like, it's got to be there's got to be a certain sense of like, giving the players narrative control, total narrative control or too much narrative control, I think is.
I agree. Like there should be a mechanic for it, like in case Moxie,
right? If
you have luck points in a game, or.
Yeah. That's why I'm beginning to favor newer systems like Gumshoe with preparedness.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just kind of do it like, all right, I'll take like a D10, like odd or even.
Yeah.
I'll do something like that. Some kind of randomness.
Yeah.
Unless it's an idea I just think is too cool for words.
Right.
Sometimes I'll just go, no, it's there. That's brilliant. It's there.
I've noticed you doing that. Yeah, I've seen you doing that.
I much prefer to do that in the game, especially if it's something I would never have thought of. And I kick myself for not having and sometimes I can make them think, yeah, I had totally planned to have that in there. It was not the player's idea, not at all.
So in terms of objects or the external environment, that's fine. But if it's not something that's previously been contradicted, I think so. That's one area. But what happens when
I think in the case of when there's when the players have a different idea?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear because when I plan something in my head, I always have a model for it, either from a movie I just saw or a place I've actually been.
Yeah.
So in the case of that hotel room,
right?
If I were to think of a hotel hallway, I would think of like any of the hotel hallways I've been in,
right?
And I have a very clear picture, but it's a lot easier to have it in my head than it is to convey that to the players.
Right. Well, that's sort of the crux of the issue. Yeah, how do you do that? And
I think
what happens when the players get the wrong idea? Like in the hotel room, the players thought they could see down the hallway and see if there's anyone else other than the three thugs. Not so. In my mind's eye, there's a place that the fourth and fifth thug could hide that they wouldn't see from their room. So does that make sense? Or,
Yeah. I think there's actually something to be said for like just sort of table mastery here on the player's part, that like thinking of what questions to ask, like in terms of like it tends to my play style, like to either try to think to ask the question, do I see any obvious blind spots with this view I'm getting from the peephole? And, as a player, if I don't think to ask that question, I have a hard time feeling bad about there having been blind spots. Take that
so I think, no, that's a really good point. I really love players who ask questions and try to get a really detailed understanding of it.
Yeah, and also I think a couple of us were unclear that we were looking through a peephole and not just looking out in the hallway.
Right, because you wanted to stay hidden.
Exactly, but a case of like, I think it's also sometimes players just miss things too.
Well, yeah.
I actually didn't realize he was talking about looking through the peephole. I thought he was like kind of sticking his head out the door.
Right.
But yeah, the peephole. Like, I've looked through people. You can't see the other two. There's no you can see directly in front of you.
Which is what they're designed to do.
And that'd be a great comedic moment to have like some horrible Yakuza guy with looking all wall-eyed as he's staring into the peephole.
Yeah.
But I think if it's not just the description of the area, it's also just the awareness of what the other players are doing.
Right. Well, so in this case, again, so the players act on what they perceive as correct and incorrect. Right? They think, there's only three guys.
We didn't ask questions.
Right.
Because we thought we knew exactly what it was.
Right. So you spring into action. You guys take out the three guys fairly easily, or you take out two of them and you're engaged with a third. So you're then the two guys look around the corner and they're like, oh shit. And then of course one of them has a gun because I'm me and I'm a horrible monster. And they're like, what? How could there be two guys? We look down the hallway. And that's sort of like, what do you do? I mean, I know what I did in that circumstance. I'm like, well, deal with it, because that's it. I mean, I did allow some takebacks, some modifications of it. Like, I wouldn't have done that if I'd known that blah blah there would be this.
And I think that's once again falls to exactly what Bill just said. Is as players, you need to ask questions.
Well, what would happen? I mean, it's not always going to happen though. So what do you do?
I think that's
when
an
there's a
important.
contradiction?
It's not going to happen every time, but I think that's an important first step.
Yeah,
is to don't just assume you've got it all in your brain.
You want to avoid these kind of situations at all. Yes, but Bill, what do you usually do? Like both as a GM or as a player?
Well, as a GM, I think my inclination would actually be to sort of allow a certain amount of modification, but sort of with an eye to cause an effect.
Yeah.
Like if it's sort of, this is a terrible analogy, but think of it like running an old version of Microsoft Office. You can undo one thing, but we're not going to hold any more than that.
Yeah.
So like essentially if you're getting sort of causationally back past that first layer,
it gets
to
very
me,
sticky,
why I'm not going to just reset the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to me that, I am a consummate metagamer, but that smacks a lot of metagaming.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, the players themselves, if the player characters, the characters who went through that hotel and were hiding in that room would know that there is a blind spot from where they could see. They know that there could be bad guys there, and they wouldn't know about it. So the player characters could then the players could make the argument, well, we would have set up a hidden video camera in that room so we could see whoever is coming out of that elevator.
But then again, then it kind of gets that stuff in the Gamers movie where it's wait. Naturally, as a master thief, I would have been crawling on my hands and knees every inch looking for traps. It can kind of get to that point eventually.
What do you do? I mean, what is your preference?
I think eventually you have to. I think it's good as a GM to remind players like even the best characters in movies and whatever fuck up sometimes.
So you would have let them they'd have to fight with the two guys.
Yeah, I would. I think if I was the GM looking back on it, I was like, you didn't see him. Look, sometimes James Bond misses shit.
Right.
Sometimes even I don't care how much of a badass you say your characters are, you're not going to get everything. Okay. Sometimes you're going to have the drop. People are going to have the drop on you, and you're going to have to deal with it.
Well, in that case, it wasn't too bad because the circuit, they were just thugs, and the players were badass. Agents.
But still, even thugs can get the drop on badasses.
Well, I know it's not that; it's that the consequences of not noticing those two guys were bad, but it wasn't like there were two vampires there that would have ripped them apart. So now let's say
now if it had been two vampires,
right?
I think that would have been different.
So you would have like been more lenient to the players if the consequence of their mistake would have been like
as GM,
a total
first I
party
also
kill or a possible party kill.
Well, in this case,
Or even just one
as a
player.
GM, as the GM, I think it would also go to what I described what we're doing, because I mean, if I was going to have 2 vampires watching the hall, I would have actually, before leading up to that, described it as this situation's a lot more serious than it was. Like I would have been like, okay, it's not just we're going into, we're trying to get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
I would have implied, all right, there's a very important asset in this room, and if we don't get him, this mission's failed.
Right.
I would actually kind of like amped up the consequences and
You would have
stakes.
foreshadowed the con.
Yeah, I would have foreshadowed that. All right, this shit's serious. That this is like a situation that the bad guys are going to be throwing a lot of actual resources to.
Okay.
But you didn't do any of that. Going back to that same scenario, you said you made clear we were just going in to try to get this guy.
Well, you
And he-
get the drop on the 3.
Get the drop on
thugs.
the guy, and also like they're probably going to be armed.
Right.
So that was the kind of urgency we had. So 2 thugs being there would have been perfectly
2 extra thugs.
2 extra thugs would have been a perfectly reasonable thing to have.
But
But if it had 2 vampires, I'm gonna go like, what the fuck? Why are there 2? Why are there 2 of those vampires whose only weakness is incredible damage we cannot inflict?
also, there's spoiler alerts, so I don't want to. For the listeners home, I don't want to spoil about what they had additional weaknesses. You just didn't figure them out until the end of the campaign. So.
Oh darn!
Yeah.
I just preferred the massive damage weakness.
Well, that
Go
is.
figure.
Yeah. So, Bill, what I mean, like, so that's good to have the one step back for the undo. But if the players make a mistake that would then cost them dearly, like maybe one of the players gets killed, all of them get killed, or mission failure, like, would you change your policy?
Strangely enough, I don't think I've really had a lot of really great opportunities to put anything into practice there.
Right.
But I think actually what I would head towards is just sort of changing the structure of the adventure or story or whatever you want to call it to sort of reflect that.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're dealing
So
in a time-critical
foreshadowing, yeah.
issue
Yeah.
or time-critical mission, obviously that's a little hard to spin, but, without having been there and experienced the vampires and what have you,
Right.
I think that would be a very important thing to maybe sort of,
Right.
change your plans as a GM and say, okay, for whatever reason, they're capturing you. And then you get to do the fun whole, this is your chance to escape scene.
The thing is, these kind of situations always you don't plan them to happen. They just come up in the middle of the game. It's always kind of like a mistake, like, oh shit, something happened. So in D&D, for example, it'd be like the players open the door and there's a dragon, and they like, oh shit, they didn't realize that there was a dragon behind the door, so they didn't have time to cast resist fire and then get out their cold weapons or whatever, prepare for the fight, So now that because they haven't prepared for those 5 rounds, they're going to be killing that dragon is going to be very, very that much harder to do, and several of them will get killed if they succeed at all, if they don't just run away. And if they run away, they lose the mission or whatever, the quest. So in that case, like in that kind of, it's always like a mistake what happens. In my experience, you never plan for it. You always try to undergo good faith best practices for game mastering.
ISO 9000 GMing.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. But there's always the fuck up. And so what are your policies when the players make a mistake that's going to like get them killed? Are you more lenient or not? So,
Well, I think I would definitely follow the very short term consequences of that through. If you open a door on a dragon, well, there's a dragon.
Yeah.
The most I would give you was maybe the consideration to say you were going to try to, listen at the door
or
something first. Right. Or you have a surprise round on it. Yeah, sure. But I think that actually goes to sort of the lack of utility of challenges that really only have one way of interacting with it. I mean, if the dragon's only there for a fight,
right,
and you bust the door in on it, you've kind of got a problem. And honestly,
You did it.
yeah, well, and I would expect a good table of players to try to mitigate that in some way, whether
Right.
it was, talking to the dragon or what have you. That's why,
Well,
I'm not really a huge fan of just a monster there for the sake of attacking. I really do love
I use
it.
that as an example, but that
Sure,
it's
and I may be
like the
picking on
players
the
make a
specifics.
decision by mistake because they either misunderstood your clues, like, oh, you smell brimstone under the door, it's hot, you hear scaly thing moving around, whatever. They missed your clues and they open the door without realizing its implication. They make a mistake, or they misunderstood what you were saying. And that's what they say afterwards. So like, what happens? Do you just step back and say, okay, fine, you haven't opened the door, what do you do? Or you let them undo the mistake because you realize if they open that door, they're going to get their ass kicked because they're all clustered up. The dragon's just going to breathe fire on them, and that's it. Because they didn't cast resist fire. So because I only used, it could have been a death trap. It could have been like opening a door up on the cyborgs, or saying "screw you" to the president of the coalition or whatever in Rifts.
Emperor.
Yeah,
Ross.
whatever. Yeah,
Emperor Joseph Prosek. Sorry, Emperor Karl Prosek. Joseph Prosek.
So
was his son.
again, how lenient are you? You kind of like both said that you give them some leeway, but not much when it's normal. But like, if the stakes change, are you more or less? Yeah.
I think there's a great and revered and hallowed GM technique that comes into play here. It's those 3 magic words combined with that, significant eyebrow raise. Are you sure?
So
that's your last chance.
Okay.
I mean, that should be the indication that you are about to make a very bad choice.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, at some point, you kind of have to let the players hoist themselves by their own petard, or it ceases to be a game.
Okay, I like it.
And also, on that, it's first of all, as a GM, like you should really, you really should prepare stuff your players could handle in some way.
Well, they could. Let's say, I mean, again, the dragon.
So once again,
that
like,
the
okay,
players could kill the
okay.
dragon if they cast resist fire first. They didn't, though.
Yes,
so.
but yes, and sometimes it's your players like say, sometimes shit happens. Yeah, sometimes shit's going to happen you're not ready for.
Okay.
Which, once again, if it's a good table of players, they can actually turn a whole new thing into a whole new thing. Like,
right.
In the case of the dragon, like you just go like, you start talking to
cleaning
it.
service.
Or I am so sorry. I was looking for something else.
Bathroom.
Is there anything I can do for you?
Yeah. No. So I mean, you can hope that, but again, it's like
Okay. If
basically you're saying if they're going to make a mistake, is going to kill them or going to be very dangerous. You're just going to let them do it.
Well, I think yes. First, you need to give some kind of "Are you sure?"
Okay.
Like you remind them of, okay, like you sure, like you have no idea what's behind this door, or
right.
It's like it was like this door. It's a huge bronze door with like a skull. A skull.
So you do a second time to call it to their attention to make sure that they're not just like whatever.
You got to give it the Regis Philbin.
Yeah.
Is that your final answer?
Exactly.
But eventually your players have to accept some responsibility.
Okay.
And and if they can't handle it, it says like it's sometimes kind of telling that they only want problems they can handle easily.
Sure.
And that kind of shows like, I'm sorry, that's not life.
Yeah.
Or this game for that matter.
Right.
But a good group of players, if they're suddenly introduced with a situation they can't overcome through brute force,
right.
They can usually overcome something. Just think of something totally off the wall that ends up making it. That's the session you remember, and it's not because of that. That's combat. That's the same as any other. It's because of something crazy. Bob over here just suddenly like started like I roll perform dance in front of the dragon to see if he likes it. Like no one thought of that, but go right ahead. And of course, like he ends up rolling like a 20, and it's like suddenly he starts doing Thriller in front of the dragon, and you actually capture his, and he just like the dragon slow claps.
Good sir, I am a patron of the arts and would like to extend you a contract.
And of course, I can say we survived. Of course, now his business agent is a dragon who refuses to be let go, so he's always going to be there.
So yeah, all right. I mean, those are all good points to bring up, but it's just for me. One of the things in role playing is that it's about making choices, making decisions, and based on information. The GM is literally the only source of information in that universe. Whatever the GM says.
But it comes down to whether the GM didn't do it clearly enough,
right.
or if they just didn't understand.
So what happens when it is your fault? When you didn't just like you forgot to mention there's a giant fucking skull and there's like the smell of brimstone from that door.
Okay,
when it's your fault.
If it's your fault and it's
and then
actually
you like look at the room description. Oh yeah, there's the
yes. At that point,
sociopathic dragon who hates all living things
except for dancers.
Way to qualify that one.
Yeah.
But yes, no.
Just using the dragon is not. It's not a generic dragon.
It's
It's the dragon that's going to kill you. It's like that's what it meant to be symbolically.
Yeah, and if it's your fault and you forget something really important, yes, I think you should go back. Like, okay, I forgot to mention this.
Yeah.
Or how are you going to alter your plan in any way? And in my experience, a good portion of the time they go, no, we keep going.
All right.
Unless you have a really great spur of the moment idea to roll with it.
Exactly.
In which case, party on.
Because as you say, a game is always it's a collaboration between the GM and the players.
Right.
And if they
But if they're working on different scripts, then you know.
well, fine. But in that case, and then you clarify it.
Yeah.
Then you give them a choice. Do you go back? Some of them might actually, no, guys, let's go with it. I've had that happen more than once.
True facts.
And often, if a player say, all right, no, we're going to go with it, but I have a crazy idea, you let it go through because hilarity is going to ensue.
Crazy Ivan?
Crazy Ivan.
I mean, it's just if the players have the script for Springtime for Hitler and you have the script for Inglourious Bastards, someone's going to be disappointed, at that table. Like,
well, when that's finally encountered,
not the viewers. That's who's not disappointed.
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I would like to see that game. Like, that's probably that'd be fiasco, wouldn't it?
Or ooh, that's an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a good group of players can take anything like that and make something out of it.
Right.
And it's really it doesn't
necessarily be.
I think it's like it's giving them choices.
Right.
Same thing too. Like in this case, if you realize you fucked up and it was your fault, you give them the choice to like, oh, okay, I need a backup here. I need to firing ret cannon.
Right. This
needed to be in there. So then you give them the choices. Like, all right, you guys can like rework your plan with this new information. Do what you need to do, and you leave it up to them.
Right.
If they want to go back, they want to redo some stuff, then you let them redo some stuff.
So, I mean, part of it is also, sometimes it's not an open-ended encounter. Like, you open the door, there's a dragon, there's any number of ways you could do it. You could fight it, you could dance for it, you can talk to it, blah, blah, blah.
Or close the door quickly.
Sometimes it's the result of one action. I jump behind the enemy and I shoot him point blank with my shotgun. Well, he had a backpack full of unstable explosives, which was in his backpack. So there's no way your character could know that, but you were point blank.
Okay, I'll say
you blow up as well.
In that case, the information the players need is he has a big bulky backpack on.
Right.
That's what you need to tell them. You don't need to tell them anything else.
But there's any number of ways to interpret that. So it's like literally...
Exactly, but sometimes, Ross, if you jump into a combat with a shotgun and a guy with a backpack, he might very well have several bottles of nitroglycerin in there.
That is the dilemma of the ages. I know.
Yeah.
And also, I think that would actually, to me, that sounds like a golden GMing opportunity. Not because it would kill the player outright, but, this is gaming. It's supposed to be entertaining on some level or another. So I would try to figure out some way to, come up with an appropriate consequence, but one that also, was dramatically appropriate, as not necessarily just dying, but like, what can I do with this player and a large explosion that will make things more interesting?
But then, of course, So so as a GM, that's fine. But then the player's like, "What? That's bullshit. I never would have done that if I known that." And it's like, "Well, you didn't." That would, and as a GM, you'd be like, "Well, that was the point of that challenge. You didn't know what was in his backpack. That was what I wanted you to try and figure out."
All right. Well, if you know your players are going to do that, a great way is to.
Well, you don't.
No. Is to once again try to cover your ass as a GM.
Yeah.
Which is it's basically American
very
living.
Bureaucratic. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But you tell them all right, these guys you're going after, we think they're trying to blow this place up.
Yeah.
So have you mentioned that okay, their mission is to destroy this place, so it's very likely they're going to have some explosives on them. And at that point, if they say, "Well, wait, I would never have done that," you knew they were here to blow this place up. So. Did you think they were going to do it with crazy, fire starter mind powers?
Or bunnies.
Or bunnies.
Or explosive bunnies, yeah.
But no, once again, covering your ass stuff like that, making sure you give them enough clues to know what they need to, but without telling them the whole story. It's basically just cover your ass as a GM.
So, but again, is if the players fail a challenge that you think of and they die or they suffer something very dramatic, loss of a limb or the failure of the mission or something like that, because of information they didn't have or because they misinterpreted something you said, you think it's basically, that's the game.
Once again, it's if you forgot to tell them something,
right?
Then yes, you need to give them. I think you need to offer them a mulligan.
Okay,
I think you really do. That if it's something your fault as the GM. But if you can actually, say if they call bullshit and you're able to actually cover all your tracks and let them know, like, I gave you clues as to this and you just didn't see them.
So what are your standards for when you fuck up and when you don't fuck up? Like, Bill, I kind of hear you like.
Oh yes, Bill, proceed.
Yeah,
I will go after you.
When do you? Well, how low is the bar for you? They have to step up. Is it? Yeah. Anyway,
where do you just make the players into lunch meat?
Well, and that has a lot to do with sort of the implied severity. I mean, if it's not a big deal, I'm not going to hold it very tightly.
Right.
But yeah, if it's a matter of life or death, I'm going to look back critically and say, maybe not did I do everything I could, but did I do,
what you needed.
Right.
So good faith best practices.
Yeah.
The ISO 9000. Yeah.
Really. I mean, it's sort of a weird way to say it, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, well, yeah, that's a good way of sort of explaining that approach. But for me, I would use at least 2 or 3 clues that, well, at least one clue that I know the players have registered, and by giving are you sure kind of thing, a lot of players, they kind of space out during a game, and you don't always know, they don't always space out for the entire game, but they're not going to get 100% of the information. You say 100% of the game information, each player's only get from 50 to 70%.
If that.
So yeah, if that, depending on the player, depending on the game. So for me, if they're going to do, I always try and make sure the player, I repeat thing several times. I go over it. I give them way more exposition than I think they need, because they obviously need more. You guys just need all the exposition. You go, I'm not being a horrible
not bitter
monster.
at all.
How you doing there, Tom? All right.
Yeah, I mean,
for me, it's giving them way more information. For me, that's good faith best practices.
Well, and I think the investigative rule of 3 applies here. If you want the players to find 1 clue, you need to put in 3 at a minimum.
I mean, with Gumshoe, that's not as much, but each clue that I do give them, I give a lot of explanation for it. There's a lot of background material for it, because for an investigative, I try and think of I understand the entire story, the background of it, so I can explain it from any angle. How did that bloody knife get there, to who made that bloody knife, or why would they use a bloody knife to kill that person, or a weird ritual dagger. Why would they do that? Where did it come from?
So what you're saying is you script out Rashomon for every session of every game you've ever
At
run.
least in my head. That's actually a really good way of putting it. You really have to understand this inside and out to explain it to a gamer. It's like teaching in a way, so that, for me, that's my definition of good faith best practice, at least for an investigative. For action games, I don't give as much information.
Right.
But it's more, I try to draw maps on scratch paper or something like that if it's a complex area, or if players want reasonable things within there, like the trash can or something like that, then that's fine, unless it contradicts something that's specific in my head.
Right.
Well, actually, often when it comes to is something there, it's we ask you first.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a bar. Is there it's like one of those drink mixer type things, and then
Yeah.
I hose him down with club soda.
Yeah.
No, it's more I apply it to his eyeball.
Yeah,
that's kind of more what we do.
Right. Yeah. No. As a player, asking questions and getting confirmation for the GM is really the best good faith best practice.
It's
for the player version.
often, the players that complain the most are often the ones that don't really want to contribute. They just kind of want to be badass.
Yeah, I could see that. There's some players who put in more effort than others.
And
they're always
as a player, you've got to put in some effort.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and you get upset at certain things, and you just can't let it go, that's usually kind of a sign of a player.
Yeah.
That has a problem. Not.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that probably goes to the largest point here, which is that in a situation like this, the most valuable thing for a GM is actually knowing the personalities of the players at the table. Like, do you know, have a bunch of kind of happy-go-lucky people who are going to be like, well, them's the breaks, or, you know.
I mean, there is like the main thing though, especially even though you have different players types, you really have to have sort of consistent standards in that. If you give the guy who's spacing off and just wants to, you know, blow everything up with his double barrel shotgun, if you give him a lot of passes because he didn't understand stuff or he misunderstood you or he wasn't paying attention, but the player who's on the ball understands it, you're just like, no, you understood what was going on, you fail, you don't do blah blah blah. Then it's kind of it's a double standard, and that kind of creates a lot of acrimony between players.
If it does. I mean,
Yeah,
I have
sometimes-
seen that not actually matter.
It depends on the group. Yeah.
Right.
Certainly at conventions, you need to be more consistent.
Well, yeah.
Because they're strangers usually, and they don't, and like you don't know what their player types are. Like if it's a home group, yeah, like everybody's friends, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just him. You know, that's just Bobby
Let's not
Joe.
name names.
Yeah.
No.
It's just Xanadu.
It's like, well, yeah, you're going to treat a guy differently if you have him in your phone than just someone you just meet.
Yeah.
Honest, and it's honest. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, when you're doing like a game with strangers, particularly, that's when you've really got to doubly be on your game as a GM.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to do as much work with if it's just your normal group of players, because they know you've got a reputation as whatever he does is going to be a fun time, as opposed to whoever the fuck this guy is.
Yeah.
You know, I actually remember a few years ago at VisionCon running an RPGA table and sort of being told afterwards that, you know, with no more than I was kind of giving up in terms of second chances, which was pretty much what I've described tonight, I was being far nicer than most people would GM that. And that was just sort of an odd sensation for me. Because
and that's actually really good. Like I've known other people who are like that. Some GMs who are just like, they don't consider the idea that they could be wrong, or that they don't consider the idea that a misunderstanding between player GM description and player interpretation can even happen. Like both sides are working in good faith, but there's still a fuck up, and that causes problems. The GM is just like, nope, fuck you, I don't care. I don't care if you misunderstood what I said and I didn't give you a chance to like figure out this mistake. I'm just going to penalize you for maybe I make the mistake, you know, and I'm just going to penalize you for my mistake. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that, and that's a really sad attitude to take, and that's a really don't be that guy.
It comes down to vindictiveness, kind of, really.
No, I think I would say it's vindictive. It's just like, I'm always right, and I don't consider
egos.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to egos.
Yeah.
And I kind of think if you're a group of friends, you often leave your ego at the door.
Right.
Because it's your friends that you hang out with when you're not playing games.
Right. Certainly different than when you're dealing with strangers.
Right. At that point, you know, it's like, you know, I think egos come into play then.
Yeah. No.
Because you know, as a GM, you want to show them like, all right, I'm a good GM. I know this shit. I can deliver what I promised. And as players, you're like, I paid money, especially if it's a con game. I paid money to be in this. He better bring it.
Yeah. There's that.
There's a little more urgency when it's things like that, or when you're running a game for a group of strangers.
Yeah.
Because I think you're trying to impress them. I think both sides are trying to impress each other.
You're trying to entertain them, yeah.
You're trying to entertain, but you're also trying to impress a new group.
Yeah. I don't even care. I'm a horrible monster. I don't even give a shit.
You didn't make it explicit that I couldn't mind control other players. What the hell?
Yeah, with social skills. Yeah, not even telepathy. Just like, why can't I roll diplomacy and make the player do what I want him to do?
Actually, try to convince him right now. And if he changes his mind, you did it.
Yeah. There you go. That's a good way of solving it. Let's see
what
some
a concept.
Rhetoric. Yeah.
What a twist.
One thing, though, one final thing I want to bring up is sort of a different kind of just misunderstanding, and that's sort of like definitional. And like Bill, you came up with the classic example before when we were talking. That's the dreaded gazebo, and that the thing is. It goes on for like the Dread Gazebo story. If you should just look it up, it's basically a classic player RPG humor story based on a true anecdote. Happened back in the 70s, And players say, the GM says, you see a gazebo. Players don't know what a gazebo is. And for the listeners at home, those of you who aren't American or whatever, or English isn't your native language, a gazebo is like an outdoor wooden structure. It's like a pavilion. It's
usually decorative,
like a bandstand or
decorative in the yard.
Yeah,
used
decorative
for
yard. So
gatherings.
it's a wooden structure that's outside
with a canopy.
with a canopy, a roof, and the players didn't know what it was. They thought it was a monster because, like, they've been hearing weird monster terms all night long. Yeah, it's a
cockatrice. It's a hubahadihi.
Yeah,
It's a Glebrizu? I don't know.
It's a
How do you
kid.
say
It's a
this?
Bandersnatch.
it's a beholder. It's a rust monster. It's a
Or a Kokra?
yeah. So the players start
Fuko?
attacking it. You know,
I made a joke.
You made a joke. Very good. And they shoot arrows at it. They fireball it. And they'll just, fine, you kill it. You win 25 experience points.
No.
Yeah.
The gazebo killed them.
Oh, right. Yeah. I guess it depends on
What is the
version.
challenge rating on a gazebo?
Or I think they run away. In one version, they ran away in terror. And so
it's like the Aristocrats. There's different versions of it.
You have angered the gazebo.
if the players are doing something that after a while you as a GM realize they're acting on bad information, like for some reason they think there's a sixth bad guy in the hotel, and they're just like, "Where's that guy? Where is he?"
And they won't let it go.
Yeah, they just they just start kicking down doors. They're like, "I kicked down the door. Okay, it's an empty hotel room. I kicked down the door. It's an empty hotel room. I kicked down the other door. Like, why are you doing it? I'm looking for the sixth guy." And you're like, what sixth? You like, at what point when you realize the players are acting on totally faulty information, what do you do? Like, do you just
For me, I would say eventually you just need to fast forward. Using that case, all right. Well, you thoroughly search all the rooms, but you find no sign of that sixth guy.
So you humor them. You're just like the GM with the gazebo. You're
But
like,
but that'd be a good time to bring in some other consequences. But they call downstairs to complain about a guy that's kicking down hotel room doors.
so you're just like, fuck you, players. You didn't understand me. You're going to be punished.
yeah, if they keep it up, yes.
Yeah.
Whereas I might actually go to the other side of the coin. In the gazebo case, write the scene off as a loss, work your way around it. You aren't recovering that one. In the case of looking for a
Sometimes it can be worth it on its own just because it's funny.
Yeah. You get at least one of those nice warm inside chuckles at your player's expense, which is what
Right.
we really GM for.
Yeah. No, it is.
In the case of the sixth guy in the hotel,
Yeah.
if they're really that dogged about it and you can do it without any other consequences and it will let you move on, have them be spying behind one of those doors and let them have just a little scare quotes hero moment.
So just
Get it over with.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, what I would do is if they once they're acting on the premise that there's a sixth guy in there, if they're still the guys that I know are there, if they're still the fourth and fifth guy, then I'll let them act on that bad information. But if they if they quote me back saying, "Well, you said this," I'm like, "No, I didn't," or and then, or God forbid, you say, "Oh shit, I didn't mean that. I meant this," Then I correct them, like, "Oh shit, I screwed up, you screwed up. We'll just blah blah blah. There's no sixth guy." I'll drop behind the curtain and be like, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean that."
Yeah, sorry about that, folks.
But if all five guys have been defeated and they're just wasting time looking for the sixth guy, it's like, why are you looking for the sixth guy? Well, you said this. Well, I didn't mean that, or you just misheard me. I said this. Well, no, you didn't. We go back and forth about who said what, blah blah blah. Then I said, no, there's no sixth guy. You don't waste any time searching. Let's move on. Screw you guys. We're just gonna go.
But then don't you run the risk of coming down with Charlie Chaplin syndrome?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously the mastermind behind the whole conspiracy was the sixth guy.
Yeah, clearly. I should just throw in a sixth guy who shows up in the elevator. He's like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" Oh God! And it gets jumped by the players.
Right.
Or the sixth guy could be a powerful vampire who rips them to shreds.
Yeah. Or it's Russell Crowe on the elevator.
Yeah. Okay. Or Charlie Chaplin.
In 2010.
Yeah.
So that
Zombie Charlie Chaplin.
Well,
It's kind of hard to tell the difference.
If you just see Charlie Chaplin,
everyone is
in the
Charlie
hotel-
Chaplin, the new indie RPG.
Well, actually,
play it.
if you actually encounter Charlie Chaplin in the hotel room in 2010, you got another scenario going on there.
Carcosa.
Yeah.
And he just, but I've always been here.
Yeah. And so are you in Night Vale.
I wear no bowler hat. No hat. No hat.
The 1920s, man ventures outside hatless. Madness.
Bolshevikism. Well, even the Bolsheviks were. No, they didn't. I don't
only
remember,
merest wisps of hair separate man's scalp from the untamed elements.
Like Stalin did, but did what was his name? Trotsky? I don't know. He was kind of hatless. He was a hatless
Trotsky has an allergy to ice picks.
He had a big set of hair. Yes, Tom, we know. And but he had a big set of hair. He didn't wear hats that much. At least in the photos I've seen of Trotsky.
Well, he was in South America.
No, not the entire his life.
He didn't really have a hat face.
Yeah,
No.
there you go. All right, I think we gotta summarize our thoughts.
You think?
Great segue there, Ross. Just going to compliment myself right there.
So good? Like talking about myself in the third person?
Yeah, so it is kind of one of the perks of being a horrible monster. Next up, Tom, you have a letter.
I do.
And then when we come back, shout-outs and anecdotes from Slasher Flick, the new, not new, but the indie RPG we finally
It's new for us.
Yeah, it's new for us.
So therefore, it's new for everyone else.
Yeah. So we'll be right back.
We are going to go back a ways for this letter, far back into the RP past. No, further back. Further back, but some drugs help. All the way back to Dungeons & Dragons. Yep, we are going back to this oldie but goldie. In this case, I want you to think back to the essentials needed to play the game. Dice, paper, books, battle mat, miniatures, booze, things like that. The things you need to truly enjoy the game. I would like to talk about one thing that I could not have enjoyed D&D without. The one thing that truly made the game the powerhouse that it was. Monty Python. Yes, I would not have enjoyed the game as much as I did without the best comedy group from the UK. The humor of Monty Python made D&D the great memory it was. It helped to put some things in perspective, especially with some of the more esoteric parts of the combat system. Whenever I would get into a tedious fight with a monster with only an ever-falling number of hit points to indicate how the fight was going, I would think of the Black Knight. I would just imagine that the massive critical hit I just scored against the Hydra went along the lines of the fight between Arthur and the Black Knight. I would sever one of the Hydra's heads and it would say, "'Tis but a scratch." It was a great way to breathe life into an otherwise cold, bloodless fight. Monty Python was a great tool for other aspects of D&D as well. The Prejudice sketch was useful for coming up with derogatory terms for D&D monster races. The How to Annoy People sketch was useful for in-character banter for a bunch of high school geeks. And the Strange Religion sketch was a great fodder for coming up with evil cults, especially the Church of the Animated. Damn, that cartoon priest was creepy. So I have to tip my hat to the huge extra tool that helped me make D&D better. Thank you, Monty Python, for making a somewhat lifeless game truly live. And as soon as I can incorporate the Mr. Creosote sketch into a game, I will consider that a major thing to scratch off my bucket list. And maybe I can have a cleric stand in a tea chest singing the English hymn Jerusalem. Mattress sketch, anyone?
Oh, well, that was I'm glad you paid homage to the classics.
I do?
Yeah.
I do. It is classic, Ross, and I think if you reach deep down,
Really
you will
glad
admit
you
it.
did. It was I was like, oh yeah, we need to give them recognition.
Exactly.
More than a shout out. It's
Bill and I are nodding vigorously as we
we
agree.
agree.
Yes.
quoting those scenes at length in between breaks.
Not much of a cheese shop, is it really?
Now I'm going to ask you this again, and if you say no, I'm going to shoot you in the face. Do you have any cheese in this store?
All right.
Look it up.
Yes, it's probably on YouTube. So shout outs. Let's talk about another classic. I have been backing some things on Kickstarter.
Yes.
And they're starting the projects are starting the fruits of these projects.
Ross is getting his thing.
Yes, I'm getting my things after waiting for months and months and years and decades and eons. First thing is To Be or Not to Be, which is a Shakespearean choose your own adventure Tom is modeling for it like a Vanna White. For those of you listening at home, he's showing it off to Bill. Bill is looking at it. It's a Shakespearean choose your own adventure based on Hamlet, where you can play as Hamlet, Ophelia, or Hamlet Senior. It's written by Ryan North, who does dinosaur comics, Quants.
Dinosaur Comics rocks.
And he writes Adventure Time comics, I believe. And he also got a bunch of webcomic artists to illustrate for this, including Keith Beaton, to Hark a Vagrant, to Andrew Hussey, who does Homestuck, to Casey Green, to just tons of other great artists. And I've only managed to skim it. It's out. The ebook version of it is coming out soon, which will have links so you can play it on your Kindle or whatever. And so it is something to look forward to if you don't want to get it in print. Mine's autographed, by the way. So.
Did you see the way Ross's lips moved when he said "forward to"?
Yes, I enunciate things.
It was oddly seductive the way he
another
did it.
Kickstarter project. Moving on, I backed being subtle there, is one that I've got Tom hooked on. Tom didn't back the Kickstarter, but he has bought the game. It is a video game called Shadowrun Returns.
Yeah.
Tom, you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do, and you're a bastard, Ross.
Yeah.
You recommended the game. I thought, it's $20. Yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I download it. It's like, I'll try it. I kind of like Shadowrun, try it out. 10 hours later. Yeah. I'm still playing and didn't notice that 10 hours had gone by.
Yeah.
And even after I noticed, I'm like, no, I can get past this mission.
Yeah. It's the main campaign's actually pretty short, Dead Man Switch, but what's really cool is that they released the level editor for it, and it's integrated with Steam, so the Steam Workshop is already up and
it's
buzzing.
easily editable. You can easily edit it.
Well, easy is...
Easier than some other things.
Relative term,
very good. I've seen some of the tutorial videos for the editor, and I'd like to make a couple of levels for Shadowrun Returns, but I don't know.
I don't have a PhD.
Oh, well, no, it's not that bad. It's just time consuming.
Is it as bad as AutoCAD?
Yeah, no, it's much easier than AutoCAD. That's not saying much, though.
Right?
Yeah, but
and Shadowrun, I could actually see you doing auto duel with it.
What was that? What game was that, Tom? Could you just mention that again?
It's let's see, Auto Duel.
Oh yeah, that one game where you're in the cars and you're shooting at people. And,
Or broken eardrums.
I know, right?
Yeah, Bill's right there.
And for the record, as for that comment on the last episode, yes, I will be willing to record that as a ringtone if someone wants.
All right, so. I really like it. There's already levels for it out on Steam Workshop. There's DLC coming out for it, like a Berlin campaign. And so it's only $20 if you bought it. I backed in the Kickstarter last year, so I got it for $15, and I get the DLC campaigns for free. So
well, good.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it though.
Yeah,
it's very awesome.
Ross Payton.
And I support things on Kickstarter.
I do, and it makes me a better person.
Does it, Ross?
It does. So keep that in mind when you're backing the next RPPR Kickstarter project.
Is that how you offset being a horrible monster? By backing things on Kickstarter?
It doesn't totally adjust the scales, but it does help. It does help. So
Ross's stay in purgatory will not be as long as it would have been otherwise.
No. I'll shave a couple centuries off. So next up is a podcast I've been listening to. It's becoming very popular now on the interwebs, and I found out about it through the somethingawful.com. They gave a shout out to it on their comedy goldmine section, and it's been going for about a year now. It's called Welcome to Night Vale, and it's
something else.
Have you actually listened to any episodes yet? I know I played excerpts for you, but is that it?
I've listened to a lot of excerpts, and just everything I hear. I must hear more of this.
Well, on the trip to Gen Con, we'll listen to it.
We totally are.
I will download all the episodes, put them on into disc so we can listen to it.
And we will never be the same.
So those are for you who haven't listened or don't know what Welcome to Night Vale is. It's a community radio for this town called Night Vale. It's in the Southwest. It's an imaginary town, but it's just like a surreal Lovecraftian abomination of a desert town that... each episode is like 15, 20 minutes long, so it's very easy to digest it, and it's got a great narrator for it. And so the first episode, they'd be like, oh, the Night Vale City Council would like to announce that they have put in a new dog park. Do not look at the dog park. Dogs are not welcome at the dog park.
You might see cloaked figures, hooded figures in the dog park. Do not look directly at the hooded figures.
Yeah.
Do not approach the hooded figures.
The dog park will not hurt you. So, like, every episode is just this, like, crazy batshit insane shit happening, being calmly narrated by a man, the narrator who's doing community radio. So it's like Prairie Home Companion for Silent Hill is like is the closest comparison I can think of. Although a lot of it is just absurd. It's like not even, some of it's creepy, some of it's just like hilarious shit. And like, the PTA meeting was disrupted by a gate in time and space opening to the prehistoric era, and 38 pterodons escaped. Then later I was like, we'd like to issue a correction. They were pterodactyls, not pterodons. And the casual count has been corrected from 0 to 38. So like it's just like batshit insane. And
I think good humor, it's like Stephen Wright's humor.
Yeah,
just utterly
and
deadpan.
some of it's like genuinely creepy. There's some genuinely creepy episodes of material on there, so it's great stuff. I actually plan to run a game base instead of Night Vale.
as you do.
I'm going to be using a surrealist, absurd role-playing game called Itras By, which is specifically made to emphasize the 1920s surrealism movement of like Salvador Dali. They're like, I think that would fit right in with Night Vale. I think that would fit. I think that would work.
I love this plan. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Do not approach the melting clocks. The melting clocks cannot harm you.
All hail the glow cloud. So next up, Bill, why don't you talk about Slasher Flick a little bit? I know I'll talk a little bit about the rules, but we actually got to try a role-playing game a listener sent to us years ago. I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to run it until now, but we finally got a chance to play it with Thad, and that will be the next one-shot on the podcast. So, Bill, what are your impressions of Slasher Flick, the horror role-playing game?
They're pretty special. I had the misfortune to make a character that didn't really cohere to the rest of the group, which meant I was mostly kind of hanging back and watching the chaos happen.
Yeah.
But between Thad and Caleb duking it out with their like slap kiss character relationship, and David rolling up as secondary characters, an entire trio of Ambers or Amandas or Brittany's. They were Brittany's, yes. Identical clone cheerleaders.
Technically not clones, just
functionally
clones.
Right.
I think that's an important distinction.
And it was pretty great because lots of people got killed by a bunch of worms running around as a human.
Spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
So, Slasher Flick is specifically meant to emulate slasher horror films. And in this in this game, you actually not only get your primary character, you also get secondary characters. And the main goal for players is to earn genre points. So they can kill off their secondary characters to gain genre points that they can then use on their primary character to help them survive the final confrontation.
And I love, like, to actually get it, you have to actually go along with all the tropes of horror slasher
you're
movies.
rewarded for going along.
Yeah, you don't have
to get genre points for doing that. So,
which I love. So, like, going off on your own, or going skinny dipping at night.
Yeah. So I had too many players, though, too many characters. Like let people make way too many secondary characters. Which, I mean, because like one thing is you can also share secondary characters. Other players can take over them for certain scenes. But what I really liked was also that instead of like giving the killer stats, to survive, there's no fight scenes. There's kill scenes where you try to avoid getting killed by the killer, and the player makes the rolls. The GM doesn't roll anything. So
it's up to the player to not
mechanically speaking, it's up to the player to live or die. And I thought that was great. And so mechanically, it's actually quite clever. And with a smaller group, I mean, it was the first game we'd all tried it, and there's just so many people there and so many characters. It was kind of hard to keep track. But good time was had by all. So that's a cool little indie horror game. So thanks to the listener who sent it to us. I'm sorry it took so long to do it. I am a horrible monster. Moving on. So
that's your answer to everything. Just move on.
Move speaking of, we movies and that kind of thing. Bill, you saw a movie that I'm sure the listeners out here would like to hear about.
I did. I would like to heartily endorse Joss Whedon's production of Much Ado About Nothing. If you would like to see the stoner from Cabin in the Woods, Captain Tight Pants, Agent Coulson, and Sandy Rivers from How I Met Your Mother act out Shakespeare in black and white, that may be kind of a soft sell because it's really a great movie. Like, if you want to see people actually do Shakespeare in an understandable way, and, it's one of the comedies, so it's also, fairly enjoyable.
More
It's-
accessible, yeah.
Right. It's not Titus Andronicus, that's for sure.
All right, yeah. That's one way of describing it.
Yep. Sorry.
No, you're not.
But yeah. Also, just it's really great to see just from a filmmaking.
I could see him like, let's kill some more characters.
Right, it's true. It is Joss Whedon, but it's also just sort of from a filmmaking perspective, really interesting in that they shot it in 12 days.
Yeah.
While everybody who was anybody was on vacation from the Avengers, and it's entirely shot in Joss Whedon's house.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate vanity project, but it's good. Like,
Right.
So that's pretty awesome. Actually, the ultimate vanity project is The Room, and that was also awesome. So,
Still can't get my wife to watch that.
Oh man,
Yeah. You know what Shakespeare doesn't have? Pictures of spoons
that's true. There are no pictures of spoons in
or footballs.
or footballs.
As Tommy Wiseau has proven, there can be no good movies without footballs.
We certainly. And speaking of games, Tom, there's a game that you wanted to talk about because you had a chance to play it recently. Master of Magic.
Yeah, actually, it's maybe it's my old age. I love games from like the early '90s.
Childhood.
Yeah, like specifically the early to mid '90s. Like the original XCOM.
Not like
ranks
Seth
up
Green
there.
and Seth MacFarlane have made careers out of that or anything.
No, but they did, so I can't do that anymore.
that was the joke. Yes.
I'm sorry, did I ruin your joke, Ross?
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, but Master of Magic was one of my favorite games from way back when.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like Civilization with fantastical magic and fantasy races.
Yeah.
Does it have your lizard people, Tom?
It's got dragon people and lizard men.
You just you start as one and you conquer the other one immediately.
And then you build them up. You
Right.
make them better.
Right. Of course.
And of course, and you instead of researching like technology, you research spells.
Right.
And
There were actually a couple sequels made in the early 2000s. Well, not sequels, but spiritual sequels like Age of Magic. Well, there's one.
I know which one you're talking about.
Shadow Magic. It was turn-based, lots of races, similar game mechanic. But it had better graphics, and I played Age of Magic 2 or whatever it was. I'm sure it's something Shadow Magic.
way to go, Ross.
I know. I should have
Monster.
before we recorded.
but it's I don't know. It's one of those. It's one
Age of Wonders, Shadow Magic.
Yeah. It was just one of those games that they're a very addictive game, especially back then. I think like XCOM particularly. 2 was just a mental nightmare.
Yeah, it was Age of Wonders, Shadow Magic. Did you ever get a chance to play that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
But I downloaded this.
I know it wasn't.
Well, I still have the CD, but it can't work on advanced technology now. But I like to give a big shout out to goodoldgames.com
Yeah.
or GOG.com. They have so many of my old favorite games for like cheap download that works on all systems now. I'm a member and I'm in heaven a lot of the times. They have so many, like they had Master of Orion 1 and 2, which I'm not going to give shout outs to, but I love those games. Just so many great games that actually you can finally just bypass all the, it uses DOSBox, but it does it all for you.
Right. And speaking of video games, Bill, you finally beat one you've been talking to me about for a while. And you finally got around to completing it. So tell us about...
Oh man, La Mulana. It's like someone took Metroidvania and Spelunky and a bottle of pure undiluted hatred and mixed them all together. It's a Metroidvania in the style of apparently some family computer system that was popular in Japan, maybe manufactured by Sony.
Famicom?
No, not Nintendo. The MSX or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But if you've played Spelunky's sort of thematic elements and the physics were pretty closely modeled from La Mulana. but La Mulana is a Metroidvania, and it is unforgivingly hard, and also modeled in the style of very early, like 8-bit computer games and, console games as well, where there really is no such thing as figuring out the puzzles except by trial and error, or in the modern era, consulting a guide, which I did because I wanted to beat it sometime before the heat death of the universe. But if you're into games that are way too hard for their own good and are trying to mimic the production values of an earlier era, I can recommend to you La Mulana.
Yeah, and it's only like $10-15, and it's usually on sale quite a bit, like on various e-sites. I don't know if is it on Steam?
It is on Steam. That's where I've got it. It's also available on Wii Virtual Console and probably other things.
Cool. And to make a slight shift, I would like to, of course, give a shout out to Transhuman because I worked on it, and it is great. And I'm
Yeah, at that, Ross. Moving on.
yeah.
Shill.
I just want
Shill.
I just want to mention that I'm most proud. I don't know if I'm most proud, but like I am proud. I am happy that they left in my bit about Hitler clone morphs. In there, look for heirloom morphs, and there's a whole thing that I wrote about that. So I don't want to spoil it. You get the book. So
Also, yes.
yes. I also want to mention another project I've sort of helped on, Shadowbound. My friend Nathan Shelton is doing a web series, silent film horror homage web series, and they're doing production. They've had an Indiegogo that finished up or is finishing up soon, and when they actually get the episodes out, we'll of course link to them. And it looks like if you look on their Facebook page, they've got really good like behind the scenes photos. They put a lot of work in getting all 1920s period authentic cars and costumes and sets. Really impressive what he's doing with like practically no money. So
A budget, yes. No.
well, Nathan is a very talented
Yes, he is.
person. So, but speaking of horror, this creepypasta you found recently that I've been meaning to read. I just keep ADDing. So go on.
Yeah, actually, someone linked this in the forums. Might have been the creepy thread of doom,
Yeah,
or if
probably.
not,
I think so,
the
yeah.
story fodder. But yeah, forgive me on the pronunciation here. I'm not up on my, plant genuses, but it's the Dionea house or something to that effect. Essentially, a series actually of creepypastas about, to put it in sort of a spoilery nutshell, houses that eat people and lure people in via sort of, mysteries and guilt. I can definitely recommend it. If you start off with the Dionea house, just Google it, which might be hard, but fortunately you'll have show notes, which will have an accurate spelling.
Yep.
It stretches over 2 or 3 other blogs and live journals, or you can go to the TV Tropes page and it'll tell you what sequence to read them in. But yeah, very creepy, very good.
Neat.
In
And
the dark.
let's see. The last thing is something, an RPG thing that Bill, you've actually got. I've been meaning to get Bundle of Holding, which is a pay what you want for a bunch of PDFs of games, and they've been doing a couple things. What are some of your finds or scores from that?
Actually, this last one that I took part in had several things that I'd been interested in. It had Monster of the Week, which is kind of the Buffy-ish version of the Apocalypse World engine, which I hope to read through and maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try and pick a copy
soon.
of Dungeon World up at Gen Con if I can find one.
Also supposed to be very good. It had Do Pilgrims of the Flying Temple.
Yeah.
I think that's the title, which looks to be a pretty good, like, kind of story-ish, light kind of game. Something that'll kit up and keep, with the Quiet Year and Fiasco for when we're feeling that way.
Yeah.
And then probably the one I've read the most so far and will probably try to figure out how to run in the near future is called View Scream. And it's the first tabletop RPG I've encountered meant specifically to be played via Skype or Google Hangout. So hopefully we can pull that idea together and make an RPPR video of View Scream sometime here soon.
Yeah, we'll have to look into the technology for that. And I've just been like burned out, not burned out, but like base raiders all the time. So doing new projects is hard on
Bye.
a small limited.
Ross's book.
Buy my book. Yes, I would like that. So finally, before we go, like we mentioned in the shoutouts earlier, I ran Slasher Flick. Thad has come back from China, but he stopped into Springfield before he's off on his way to Illinois to learn and pursue a degree and a PhD. So we had a lot of players, so I decided to try out Slasher Flick because it would be good for a lot of players. And it was kind of like, I knew it wasn't going to be a very serious game.
It's good for us because we're going through a period of upheaval right now.
Yeah.
It's a troubled times, and we need something to help us.
Yes.
Something good for us.
Something what the people of Gotham need.
Not what they deserve.
Not what they deserve, yeah. In Slasher Flick, so you guys both played in it. What were your favorite moments or highlights of the game?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, basically any scene with any of Caleb's characters was just great. The
triplets.
The triplets.
The triplets were very good.
Yeah, I think I liked it when my secondary character, the chef, died. His last words were al dente.
Yeah.
Still not sure why.
I don't know why either, but
it worked.
It just came to me.
It was modeled. It was basically, for those of you who like the World of Darkness games I've run, is the Derek Bishop Chronicles, Anderson Island, and Inherit, which I haven't posted yet, but it was in one of the Base Raiders Kickstarter bonus batch. It's a 1980s modeled horror thing. So the setting it's on South Padre Island, some spring break / skeptics convention,
which is a thing.
Yeah, which is there's spring break college students there, and there's a skeptics convention going on at the same time. Like
their scheduler was bad.
It was bad, and of course, in order to disprove the supernatural, the skeptic had to enact a dark occult ritual, which summoned, of course, a very bad person. So
it was my turn to do the funny accent in the game. David did very well the last time.
It's true.
Yeah.
So I did I think all of us, we really fully embraced the horror movie aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my only complaint with Slasher Flick is you guys were rolling too well. For I really wanted to kill more characters, but
Ross, the dice didn't want you to.
Yeah,
you killed far and away above half of us.
Yeah, no, I killed quite a few, and we don't want to. I don't want to give the final body count around. You have to wait till I post the episode. Yeah. But
and of course, I love it with the characters playing rich people. There was so much glorious racism. Just
God,
magnifique.
Yeah, we are 80s horror film tropes. I had to stop giving away genre points for those kind of.
No, I'm not going to say what line that was spoken.
It's commented on in the episode. When
it's
you
coming.
listen to the
I don't want to say it now, but it's probably one of the best lines we've ever come up with.
And just an update on the Better Angels campaign that Bill and I are playing through.
Man.
We are doing some fun things in there. So in the latest episode,
we ripped off Lowe's.
Yeah, we did. We're teaching gang members to flip houses, and they're gonna sell our souls so they can learn how to flip houses.
Yep.
And
yes, they are.
They are totally awesome like that. And what I like though is Caleb figured out. For those of you listening to the Wild Talents, here's a new Arcadia campaign. The Skyrim annual episode that Caleb ran. He worked in the same game mechanics for this episode. Of Better Angels, which to say basically enemies that leveled up with the players, in other words. And my character found out that in a very hard way. So that was fun. And then finding out why that zombies were attacking us in the first place. It's because a teenager had a crush on a girl. And
there is no more powerful force in the universe than a kid pining over a
very
girl.
Shakespearean. So yeah. So good something to hit for you to listen to whenever I get around to posting that, maybe at some point. I am a monster.
Ross is a monster who is also horrible.
So
this is true.
We'll see you guys at Gen Con. We'll have, of course, our next episode will be a Gen Con wrap-up. I know I said in the comments that the next episode, that this episode is going to be another review of modern scenarios, but I think we're going to go buy some good scenarios some modern scenarios at Gen Con. Then Tom and I can read each of them.
Yes, we will do that again.
Yeah, we will do that again, but for more up to date. I'm thinking maybe a Pathfinder and then maybe a Trail of Cthulhu scenario or something like that. I'm not sure. We'll find some good stuff.
If I find a Palladium scenario,
no, good scenarios, modern scenarios.
Oh, that's
like
right,
a
good.
contrast of like what like we talked about scenarios are written like back then, but we'll do one for one scenarios.
Well, if I can find
now.
I'll get one. But if I can find a Palladium scenario written recently, I'm so gonna get that.
People call me the monster. They call.
I learned it from watching you, Ross.
I see how it is. All right, so Billy, you're the guest. Any final thoughts before we go? No.
Locally grown.
All right. Well, this has been RPPR, episode 90, Theater of the Mind. I'm Ross Payton, and with me has been Tom Church and Bill. So we will
Say hi,
don't have a
Bill.
last name.
Again.
Yes.
Hi, Bill. Again.
We will see you guys next time.